What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to Channel Musi Gaming here, and today I want to talk to you about the best commander in Rise of Kingdoms tier list that you see up here on the screen. Now, this is actually the old tier list that I made about a month ago, predicting the performance of Baichu, Tokugawa Ieyasu, based on the information that we have on their skill sets as well as the pincer. So this is a little bit outdated because one, they were not really in the game yet, and two, pincer, we really didn't see the full potential of pincer until Baichi and Liu Che actually started rocking on the field. And after going through a bit of KVK fight, I have a clearer idea of how they should be performing on this particular tier list. And also at the same time, we had 4 different commanders actually join Season of Conquest, the pre-season of Conquest, KVK2 format. Takeda Shingen, CJ, Bertrand, and Cyrus the Great, and then CJ and Bertrand actually got the rework. So reallocating their ranks based on the rework that was actually made to CJ and Bertrand will be pretty crucial. So I thought it was a time for us to I thought it was a good time for us to actually revisit this list and then give you a little bit of better rundown on how I think the meta has changed overall since a month ago. Now, with that said, how you read this tier list is that there's many different tiers. S plus means that it's best of each troop type. Now, that means that there is no competition in each of troop type, whether that's cavalry, infantry, archer, or leadership, that this commander is the best of its kind. And there's only one commander that can actually get ranked S plus. The reason why I put this in there is so that there's less controversies between, okay, like, well, why isn't like Liu Che and Baichu both S pluses? Because, you know, they're both great commanders. But, you know, like, what is the one single best commander that you can invest in Rise of Kingdoms as of May of 2025 is basically what I want to recommend for S plus tier. Now, from the leftmost side, so if it's actually placed on the left side of the other commander, that means that this commander right here is actually the best of this tier as well. So previously I ranked Arthur as the best of S plus tier, which I think makes him the best commander in Rise of Kingdoms as of whenever I made this tier list. So this is how you can read it, right? Same goes with meta garrison commander tier list, right? This list basically lists out all the meta garrison or rally commanders, but then again, I thought Subutai was the best rally / garrison commander in the game at the moment of this tier list release, so that he's actually put on the very left side of meta and garrison and so forth. Now, S tier means that this is the best pairing or equivalent of basically S plus tier, right? That means that if I pair this commander with S plus commander, and that will be basically the best commander that you can see on the field. But then again, also at the same time, this commander's pure strength also is on the top tier level, is what S tier commander basically means, right? So that's basically what S means. A means that it's meta commanders. That means that if you're making 2 marches, they're a must-have for your second march, at least. So good example of that is Joan of Arc Prime, right? Joan of Arc Prime for a lot of cavalry mains, you really need her on your second march for you to actually make that, you know, wedge formation commander actually work. So that's where A tier commanders are. And then B means that it is good for 2.5 to 3 marches, right? So if you're bringing like subpar second march of cavalry, subpar second march of infantry, those commanders are basically needed. And those are the B tiers. And then C just means that it's usable, but they're not meta. Like, you can technically use them, but then again, like, I would recommend using them if I was you. And then D just means trash. And F means Lubu. So D means that, like, you shouldn't be using those commanders at all, almost at all. Like, no reason for you at all for you to use them. And then the F means that they're just practically useless. Every single commander sculptures that you invested in these commanders are actually wasted. So that's basically how it looks like. Sorry, that was a big rundown, but then again, let's just go ahead and start from the very top. Now, from S plus tier, best of each troop type. Now, do I think Arthur is still the best commander in Rise of Kingdoms? At this point, as of May of 2025, my opinion on that has changed. And I think actually Liu Che is the best commander in Rise of Kingdoms ever since the release of Pincer. Now, the reason for that is because, for one, Arthur does not have a great pair as of May of 2025. It can use, I don't get me wrong, it can use commanders like Philip. It can use commanders like William for him to actually perform good and well on the field. But then again, what I felt using Arthur Liu Che combo with Artifact KVK is that if Arthur had a really good combo pairing, I think he would perform way better than he's actually going to perform right now. Now, with that said, the current best meta right now for the field is actually by Chu Liu Che. I don't think anyone disagrees with that, right? So inevitably, I have to put Liu Che before Arthur. But then again, I don't think Arthur is weaker than Zhuge Liang, to be honest. Like, I think everyone can agree to that, right? Arthur is better than Zhuge Liang by far. And in fact, I would actually move Philip before Zhuge Liang because his versatility has proven himself to be really useful in almost any cases. That he's probably either here or here, but I think Arthur still is the best cavalry commander in Rise of Kingdoms, and I think he still outperforms Philip. So that's basically how I would put this, right? Previously, I put Philip behind Zhuge Liang because Zhuge Liang is a crazy commander and he does a lot of damage, right? But then again, I think the meta has shifted towards favoring more and more versatility with Philip. That's how I felt during my fights that I had in KVK. So I've actually put Philip before Zhuge Liang. Now, the question comes down to whether or not I should put Liu Che or Bai Chu in S plus tier, right? Again, I can only put one commander in S plus tier of each troop type. And my answer still is that I think Liu Che is a better commander than Bai Chu, as I predicted a month ago before seeing Bai Chu kind of perform on the field. I think Bai Chu's kit is really, really strong, but I think given that his conditions are way more restrictive for him to do a lot of malice damage and him to go down all the way down to like 10%, 50%, whatever it is, 60% health. I think that restriction just puts him at a lower bracket than Liu Che overall, whereas Liu Che does massive AoE damage, only 150 damage factor less than what Bai Chu has for active AoE. And then also he does instant proc damage, two types of instant proc damage. His third skill does 300 damage factor smite damage with I think like 10% chance or something like that. It was a pretty good chance. And then his expertise doing combo damage with 25% chance with chance of you gaining 100 extra rage, right? Overall, just versatility wise, like you will never regret investing in Liu Che, like as of right now, 2025 of May, right? Whereas Bai Chu, if you invest in him, if you don't have a great pair like William Wallace or Liu Che, it's gonna be a little bit tough for you to actually perform better than any other commander in the game. So that's why I put Liu Chen the very left side of best commander of each type, and then very left side of S tier though still is deserved by Chu in my opinion. So the only change that I have made on the S plus side is actually swapping the places of Liu Che and Arthur, and then swapping the places of Philip, and Zhuge Liang. Now, with that said, though, would I actually change the S tier from here onward? And for those of you who are not, so let's just first talk about siege commanders, right? These two commanders are actually the siege commanders that does either range smite damage and range normal damage. And based on what kind of armaments that the V formation have, these two commanders really perform well on the field. And I don't know why I put Gonzalo behind Gaza, but I think Gonzalo is probably the best commander that you can possibly have as range commander. So I'm gonna put Gonzalo ahead of Gaza Monarch, right? And the reason for that is because Gonzalo is the only commander in the game that actually does range smite damage circular AoE. And that itself, because it's an AoE, you're not going to take counterattack damage from anyone that you're actually hitting. And that really puts all the range marches at an advantage that other commanders that were designed to be engineering commanders were not really bringing into the field. So I think Gonzalo is probably the goated engineering commander right now. I wouldn't put him at S plus just because of how I think still engineering as a whole troop type still needs a long way for us to actually go. But then again, I'll put those two side by side at S tier because to put Gonzalo in between those commanders, I think he still needs a little bit of work for him to actually become more powerful. Now, with that said, would I make any changes in the S tier? And my answer is yes. I'm actually going to bump Ho up a tier so that he's actually ahead of Herman Prime. Because I think at the end of the day, right now, I think archers are in a really bad place. They would just get instant popped right away as soon as they get just out of place, just because of how powerful infantry is. So archers can't really attack infantry too much because of their sheer power strength, right? And cavalry would just eat them up as soon as they see them on the field, with multiple marches just targeting and focusing on one archer march, right? So yeah, at this moment, as of May of 2025, I would actually bump Ho up a tier so that he's actually ahead of Herman Prime. So that's basically what I would actually put for each commander. I don't think there is a leadership commander that can actually make it to the S tier at this moment. I mean, obviously Philip is in another world of his own. But then again, I don't think the leadership commander wise, I don't think there is really a commander that we can actually put him up there. So that's where I would actually put them. Now, meta commanders. And would I change this list? And my answer is absolutely yes. Unfortunately, I think the power of pincer in reality versus what I've actually estimated a month ago is too much better than what I personally have suspected before. So what I would do is actually I'll move William Wallace to the very left side of meta commanders. Because if you're building two infantry rallies right now, what I would recommend for you is actually building two smite damage commanders instead of building one smite damage commander set, which is most likely going to be Bai Chu Liu Che, and building another that is basically Ragnar Prime and Guan Yu, or Ragnar Prime and Scipio Prime, right? So that's what I would do. And then I'll move, to be really honest, I'll actually even move Scipio Prime, no, the Ragnar Prime down. No, actually, I'll actually keep him. He's still better than, I think, Joan of Arc Prime because of the fact that I think like currently we're using full Arthur, right? If you were using full Joan of Arc Prime, maybe she could move up one tier. But then again, I think Ragnar Prime still is above Joan of Arc Prime. Now, with that said, I would actually move Guan down to a B tier and actually right behind Scipio Prime. The reason for that is, again, there is currently no place for meta 7 March. Like, even if you make 3 different infantry marches, I think the best infantry marches are going to be Bai Luce, William Wallace, and CJ, and then Ragnar Primus, Scipio Prime. So that primary commander slot for infantry, I think Guan Yu has lost his place to Ragnar Prime, but his value is still as an AoE silencer, the only AoE silencer in the game. Actually, nowadays CJ actually has inherited that too. It's gonna put him at a lower tier in my opinion. By all means, he's still a great commander. You can still use Guan Yu with Scipio Prime or Ragnar Prime, in fact. But then again, I think it is time that we actually move Guan Yu down a little bit, right? Shazar, I think, deserves that spot right there. Belisarius Prime. I know that a lot of people are using Joan of Arc Prime with Belisarius Prime, and I think that combo is really strong. But when Ho actually becomes becomes the primary for Joan of Arc Prime, when Arthur basically gets the combo damage commander, I think it's inevitable that the Belisarius Prime will be moved down a tier. But right now, I think this is not a bad tier list for now. And with that said, though, I think this is exactly where I'll put the latest reworked CJ into the A meta commanders, right? And in fact, I would actually move him. I'll actually move him above Belisarius Prime, and I'll actually move him above Shazar. And simply because of how powerful smite damage commanders and pincer is lately. But then again, also at the same time, CJ has this skill that with 50% chance, he actually only takes like 50% of the damage that he takes, or something like that. And that skill right there really makes CJ Marsh really, really powerful and really, really tanky. So with that said, and also at the same time, he does have a little bit of AoE silence too. And because of how powerful CJ is as a commander, I think I'll actually move him up to A tier. I just need to find where I'll put him though. His damage factor is a little too low in my opinion. Alright, so I think in between Belisarius Prime and Shazar. No, I think between Joan of Arc Prime and Shazar is probably where his place is as of right now, as far as what I've seen. So CJ, I think, is not a bad commander. You know what? I think Shazar is a little better player, commander. It's a tough decision, just because for one, it hasn't been that long since we actually seen CJ rework, right? But then again, from the reports that I've seen before, from how well he performs, and given that he has a potential to step up even further with potential museum buffs that is coming for him, that I don't know when it's gonna come. But then again, I think he actually deserves a spot above Belisarius Prime and in a tier commander, meta commanders tier. Now, with that said, for B tier, let's just go through it, right? Scipio Prime has a place. Guan Yu has a good place. I think this is probably a perfect place for those two. Nevsky. Nevsky's still usable. If I'm bringing 2 marches as wedge, I'm still using Huo Arthur and Nevsky Joan or Joan of Arc Prime and Belisarius Prime, right? So Nevsky's in the right place, I think. I think William is also in the right place. Nebu. Dido. Dido. I'll actually move Dido down to usable but not meta. And I'll put her right above Yanziska. And she's usable, but not meta at all. Like, not even close, right? So I think that's probably the right place for her, to be really honest. Alright, let's just move on. Boudica Prime. Boudica Prime. By definition, she should be in B tier because she's still okay for 2.5 to 3 marches. But I'll actually move her down all the way to where I see Pakal. I think like right above Pakal is about where I'll put her. Trajan is fine. Both of the new marches are fine. New siege marches are fine. I think Margaret is in a really good place because she can work with both the skill damage commanders and smite damage commanders for range. And then a lot of people actually use Margaret with Gonzalo, which is what I used to run. So I think Margaret's in a good place. And what is this guy doing here? Okay, well, Justinian. I will put him. I'll put him right above Lapu. I'll put him right behind Yanziska. I mean, in all honesty, yeah, like nowadays it's very tough for you to actually use Justinian, in my opinion. So, it is what it is. And I think this is probably where I'll put Bertrand at B tier, right? But then again, not at the very end of the list. I would say he's like about the same as Trajan and Nebu. I think in between Trajan and Nebu is basically what I'll put him. Obviously, a lot of combo damage is good. But then again, it's not 100% meta, and his damage factor is kind of a meh, right? And he doesn't have any low cooldowns combo damage coming in either. So I think I'll put Bertrand, the rework Bertrand, in between Nebu and Trajan. I think that's a pretty good place for him at this moment. Sorry. All right, let's move on. So meta and rally garrison. Now, I still think that in terms of sheer power level without pincer and without combo, without formation, I think Subutai is #1 meta and rally garrison commander in the game. He just doesn't have a good pair right now. So with that said, I'm gonna actually move Gorgo up all the way to the left side. The reason for that is Pincer has elevated her power a little too much. And with that said, I don't think there is a way. I think like Gorgo is still one of the best commanders in meta and rally garrison. And yeah, I think putting Gorgo above Subutai with all things considered, including the pincer and everything, I think Gorgo deserves a top spot. Now, I think Subutai does come right after her. But then again, just because of the fact that he has to use Attila and Arch and not be able to kind of utilize the full potential of combo commander that he is, I think he actually deserves a place right below Gorgo instead of being the #1 meta rally garrison commander in Rising Kingdoms, right? I would, however, bump Tokugawa Ieyasu up. Just because of how powerful his powerful pincer is. Like pincer. Rally Garrison, pincer matters the most, right? Because everyone's gonna have pincer if you're in a decently seeded kingdom, right? So Tokugawa will move up. The question is where. And I think rather than moving Tokugawa up, I think it makes sense for us to actually bring down the commanders that is no longer that much of a meta, right? So Ashur-Venipal was good until Attila Subutai came along, right? And I think Ashur-Venipal is little bit down where he needs to be actually in between, well, right above basically where Eleanor is, right? Like usable, best of his kind, but then again, not the greatest, right? Because if you're gonna run rally nowadays, you're gonna run Attila Subutai. You're not gonna really run Ashur-Venipal with Henry or Ashur-Venipal with Zhuge right? There's still uses of him though because he does so much AOE damage with like Zhuge and counterattack damage with Henry. I think he's still usable, but he needs to be moved down a little bit, right? Scipio Aemilianus, I think, has lost his place just because of how powerful the normal damage rally is with Subutai Attila. So I'm actually moving it down below Tokugawa. I think Tokugawa does deserve a place above Eleanor and Henry. And Ashur-Venipal. Now, is he better than Choyoung? If someone's running Archer Garrison, Choyoung Hera against Attila Subutai, or anything. I think from the commander's sheer power level, he's not as good as Choyoung. So I'm actually going to leave him with that, and I'm actually pretty confident that this is probably the right tier list. But yeah, let's go ahead and move on. We have Takeda Shingen. Going into before Season of Conquest only, right? Takeda Shingen is probably about what Edward of Woodstock basically does, right? But then again, he doesn't have really the best pairing. So I'll actually move him down below Khan because I think even if he moves to KVK Season 2, it's kind of a meh. And what is Charlemagne doing here? Okay, we have to bring him down to Lulu. I make mistakes. I think I made a mistake when I was actually moving him up. I think he was Herald or something like that. But they're both with gray beard, and then they're both like they look like they have crowns and stuff. So I must have made a mistake. But yeah, Charlemagne deserves a Lulu tier, right? And Cyrus the Great. I think Cyrus the Great edition is good. He's nowhere near where CJ and Bertrand will be, I think, still. But I think he is better than... I think he's better than Tomeris in open field. So I'm actually going to put him above Tomeris. I don't think he's better than Uzi Tian, because Uzi Tian in Season 2 should still be one of the best, technically one of the best garrison leaders that you can actually have in the game. So yeah, that's basically where I'll put them. Is there anyone else that I would actually change along the line? Not really. Okay, let's just go ahead and move on to C tier. I think we're getting very close to the end. Now, Sargon, I think it's in the right place. Yeah, and Ziska, I would actually move him down right next to YSS. Just because I think if you're running Garrison nowadays, you're just going to run Eleanor Hera, right? He is usable, but not really. So at the very end of C tier is basically what I would put him. So that move, I think, makes sense to a degree, right? I think everyone else is really looking really good in C tier. D, trash. Now Harold now I think is pretty fair to be called trash. XY, yeah, no one's gonna be using XY. Artemisia, Honda Tarakatsu. I think everyone is in their right places. Alright, let's just go ahead and move on to Lubu. Lubu. The left side of Lubu is always going to be Lubu. Like, there's no question about it. I really hope that they do release a proper Lubu, though. Not the Dynasty Warriors collaboration version of it, but like what Baichu does level Lubu, right? Like, the meta breaking. Because all those Asians, including myself, like, that love Three Kingdoms and that loves like the romance of Three Kingdoms or whatever it is, like, man, like, Lubu should not be here. Like, Lubu should be up there. Lubu should be where Liu Che is, in my opinion. He is a legendary warrior from the fiction and the real history. So it's painful for us to see Lubu down here, but it is what it is, right? Hannibal Balka, yeah. Don't get him. If you have money, just get the first package so that you can get the Writers of History. But then again, anything beyond that, don't buy Hannibal Balka. He's not useful in pre-KVK, KVK1 even. So, yeah, that's what I was actually suggest. Charlemagne, yeah, again, Lubu tier. You can get him for Writers of History, and that's it. Don't ever touch him. All right, so that's basically the updated tier list that I have. I know I ran for a very long time, 32 minutes, as far as I can tell. Hopefully this was actually helpful. For those of you who are considering getting a new commander, who are considering investing in a new commander, I think this is, to my eyes, this looks pretty accurate. And they reflect not only the commander's like true strength, but then again, true strength in terms of like what their power level is right now, but then again also at the same time their potential in the future to a degree, right? It was painful for me to actually move Arthur down because I think Arthur, if he has a good combo commander pairing in the future, I think Arthur would actually have a potential to be above Liu Che, but right now that's not the case. So yeah, but yeah, that's basically it. You can see that infantry has taken over the board. There's so many infantry in the SSA, S plus S and A, right? And it is what it is. It is an infantry meta again. So I hope you guys actually enjoyed this video. If you did, please go ahead and drop a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you can. And if you want to talk about my tier list or anything else about Rise of Kingdoms, feel free to join the Discord down below. On the link in the description, I'll put the link there. And as always, I'll see y'all on the next video. Thank you. Peace.